Welcome to the Daily Life, where we uncover the stories behind the headlines, reveal the hidden connections that shape our world, and bring you the truth that others won't tell. I'm your host, and today we're diving deep into Iran-Israel War 2025. June 13th, 2025, a date that will reshape the Middle East for generations to come. What began as a surprise Israeli military operation has escalated into one of the most serious regional conflicts in decades, bringing the world's superpowers to the brink of involvement. This is the story of the Iran-Israel conflict of 2025, a conflict that has rewritten the rules of nuclear escalation and threatens to reshape global geopolitics. The conflict erupted without warning on June 13th, 2025, when Israeli forces launched what military analysts describe as one of the most coordinated surprise attacks in modern warfare. The primary targets were Iran's nuclear facilities and key military installations, a move that instantly transformed decades of proxy warfare into direct confrontation. Within hours, Iranian radar systems detected incoming missiles, but the damage was already being done. Israeli forces had successfully struck multiple targets, including critical infrastructure at Iran's nuclear program. The message was clear. This was not a limited operation, but a comprehensive attempt to neutralize Iran's military capabilities. Iran's response was swift and devastating. By June 14th, ballistic missiles were raining down on Israeli cities, marking the beginning of what experts are calling a threshold war. A conflict that has pushed both nations to the edge of their military capabilities while stopping just short of weapons of mass destruction. To understand this conflict, we must look beyond the immediate triggers. For decades, Iran and Israel have engaged in what military strategists call shadow warfare, a complex web of proxy conflicts, cyber attacks, and covert operations that has defined Middle Eastern geopolitics since the 1979 Iranian Revolution. The nuclear question has remained at the heart of this tension. Israel has long viewed Iran's nuclear program as an existential threat, while Iran has maintained its right to peaceful nuclear development under international law. Previous conflicts in Gaza, Lebanon, and Syria have all served as proxies for this larger confrontation. What changed in 2025 was the calculus of deterrence. Intelligence sources suggest that Israeli leadership believed Iran was approaching a nuclear threshold that would fundamentally alter the regional balance of power. The decision to act preemptively, according to military analysts, was driven by a now or never assessment of Iran's capabilities. What began as targeted strikes quickly spiraled into sustained combat. By day 3 of the conflict, Iranian forces had launched approximately 200 ballistic missiles toward Israeli territory, with Israel's advanced missile defense systems intercepting the majority, but not all of the incoming threats. The human cost began mounting immediately. Casualty figures remain disputed, but independent sources confirm civilian deaths on both sides, with infrastructure damage affecting millions of people. Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian addressed parliament, declaring that his country was not seeking nuclear weapons but would defend itself against what he termed unprovoked aggression. Perhaps most concerning for the international community is how this conflict has rewritten nuclear escalation rules. Military experts note that strikes on nuclear facilities may paradoxically increase Iran's motivation to develop nuclear weapons as a deterrent against regime change, the exact outcome Israel sought to prevent. The international response has been swift but divided, reflecting the complex alliances that define modern geopolitics. President Donald Trump, barely 5 months into his second term, faces perhaps his most serious foreign policy crisis. Initially taking a measured approach, Trump announced he would allow 2 weeks for diplomacy to proceed before deciding whether to launch strikes against Iran. However, Iran's Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei has warned that any American military involvement would cause irreparable damage to U.S. interests. The stakes for America are particularly high. Iran-backed militias in Iraq have already vowed to attack U.S. military bases in the region if Trump decides to enter the conflict directly, potentially drawing American forces into a multi-front war. Russia has taken an unexpected diplomatic role, with President Putin securing Israeli assurances for the safety of Russian workers at Iran's Bushehr nuclear power plant, highlighting how global nuclear infrastructure has become intertwined with regional conflicts. Pakistan's response has been particularly telling. The country has shut all border crossings with Iran indefinitely and closed its airspace, fearing the conflict could destabilize its own security situation. Pakistani officials have expressed deep concern about secessionist movements potentially exploiting the regional chaos. As we enter the second week of conflict, the situation remains dangerously fluid. Recent missile exchanges continue daily, with Iran launching approximately 10 ballistic missiles toward Israel just yesterday, most of which were intercepted by Israeli defense systems. The humanitarian crisis is deepening. Both countries have seen civilian casualties, and the broader region is feeling the economic impact. Oil prices have surged, global supply chains are disrupted, and international airlines have suspended flights across much of the Middle East. Diplomatically, the conflict has exposed the limitations of international institutions. The United Nations Security Council remains paralyzed by competing interests, while regional powers are choosing sides in ways that could reshape Middle Eastern alliances for decades. Perhaps most ominously, both nations appear to be preparing for a prolonged conflict. Intelligence reports suggest both Iran and Israel are mobilizing additional military assets, while civilian populations are preparing for extended periods of uncertainty. The implications of this conflict extend far beyond the Middle East. We are witnessing the first direct military confrontation between two regional powers with advanced military capabilities in the age of precision warfare and cyber conflict. For Israel, this represents an existential calculation about Iran's nuclear ambitions and regional influence. For Iran, it's about sovereignty and resistance to what it sees as Western-backed aggression. For the world, it's a test of how international systems respond to conflicts that could reshape global energy markets, nuclear proliferation, and regional stability. The nuclear dimension cannot be overstated. Military analysts warn that prolonged conflict could actually accelerate Iran's nuclear ambitions rather than deterring them, potentially leading to a nuclear-armed Iran, the very outcome this conflict was meant to prevent. The economic implications are already global. Energy markets are volatile, regional trade routes are disrupted, and the broader Middle East faces potential destabilization that could affect everything from refugee movements to terrorism threats. As this conflict enters its second week, the world watches and waits. What began as a calculated military operation has evolved into something far more complex and dangerous. The decisions made in the coming days by leaders in Tehran, Jerusalem, Washington, and capitals around the world will determine whether this remains a regional conflict or escalates into something with truly global consequences. One thing is certain. The Iran-Israel conflict of 2025 has already changed the Middle East forever. The question now is whether diplomacy can prevent it from changing the world. This has been a comprehensive look at the Iran-Israel conflict of 2025. For the latest updates on this developing story, continue following reliable news sources and international reports. The situation remains fluid, and the stakes have never been higher. That's our deep dive for today here on The Unseen. If this analysis helped you understand the bigger picture, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. We're constantly uncovering the stories that shape our world. Drop a comment below with your thoughts on today's topic, and let us know what hidden story you'd like us to investigate next. Your engagement helps us bring these important stories to light. For more in-depth analysis and breaking news coverage, check out our playlist in the description. Until next time, keep questioning what you see, because the most important stories are often the unseen ones.